When you think of a British ghost story, what comes to mind? Probably crumbling castles, right? Misty moors? Well, forget all that. Because the most important hauntings in Britain today, they're happening on streets you probably walk down every single day. So what secrets are these city ghosts trying to tell us?
Here's the twist, the secret that changes everything. These stories, they're not really about the dead. Not at all. They're a weapon, they're a map, and they're a memory. And they're all being used by the living in this constant, invisible struggle for the soul of the city itself.
Yeah, we're not talking about some long-dead king or queen haunting a dusty old palace. The ghosts that really matter today, you'll find them in places like high-rise council estates, or maybe glimpsed in the mirror behind the bar at your local pub. And, get this, they're even showing up in your social media feed.
Okay, so let's start let's call it an urban ghost tour. Our first stop is the High Street, which, as you know, is changing so fast. And it's here that ghost stories have become an actual weapon in a very real, very modern economic war.
This is a perfect example of something called haunted gentrification. It's fascinating. On one side, you have a developer. They take an old factory, right? And they sell its romantically eerie history to attract new, wealthy residents. It's a marketing tactic. But then, for the original community, the people who were pushed out, that same ghost story is a protest. It's a reminder of the workers who lost their jobs, a warning against their history being totally erased. It's the same ghost, but a completely different story depending on who's telling it.
So that's the commercial side of things. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll find that our cities are absolutely teeming with specters you'll never, ever read about in an official guidebook. These are the ghosts that history tries to forget, the ones that represent communities whose stories have been pushed aside or sometimes, intentionally silenced.
Take social housing estates, for example, places that are often threatened with demolition. The ghost stories here aren't really about scaring people. They're about resilience. You hear a story about, say, Mrs. Higgins from flat 7B still walking the halls. She's not there to spook the new residents. She's become a protector of the community's memory. She's like this spectral tenant who refuses to be evicted, reminding everyone that this building isn't just bricks and mortar. It has a soul.
And then you go to a place like London's Soho. The ghost stories you hear in the queer community there, they're about reclaiming space. A legend about a phantom dancer or seeing faces in a bar mirror, that's so much more than just a spooky tale. It's an act of mourning. It's an act of defiance. It transforms these bars and clubs into living memorials for people lost to hate crimes or the AIDS crisis. It's a way of saying, we are still here. We remember.
I love this one. It's such a brilliant example of how folklore travels across the world. You have migrant communities bringing their spirits with them. So you might hear about a jinn from Islamic folklore protecting a takeaway shop in Birmingham, or a duppy from Caribbean lore haunting an estate in Bristol. These aren't just old tales being retold. This is a new, hybrid culture being born right in front of our eyes. It's these incredible global traditions being woven directly into the fabric of British city life.
And honestly, the list of these unseen ghosts just goes on and on. Think about it. The echoes of old industrial disasters, the phantom sirens you can supposedly still hear from the Blitz and tube tunnels, the restless spirits of crime victims. These are the stories that the official history books tend to gloss over. But the city never forgets.
Okay, so this brings up a really important question, right? What happens when these super personal, super local stories get discovered by the mainstream, when they go big? Suddenly you have to ask, who gets to own a ghost?
Well, there's actually a pretty predictable path for this, a kind of ghost story pipeline. It starts with a genuine piece of local lore, then it gets picked up, it gets amplified, and before you know it, it's been packaged up and turned into a full-blown money-making industry.
Just look at Edinburgh's famous ghost tours. If you've ever been, you know what I'm talking about. The city's incredibly dark history is turned into this nightly theatrical show. The tour guides are basically actors. They're paid to get the timing of a jump scare just right. And what they're selling is a simplified commercial version of the past. The authentic, complex story, it's been turned into a ticketed product. But here's the thing. That whole pipeline, from a local story to a global product, it's been put on steroids. It's been totally supercharged, because the biggest shift in how we tell ghost stories today isn't happening on the streets anymore. It's happening right here, on our phones, on our screens. Technology has completely rewired the whole game.
Just think about the life cycle of a single urban legend now.
In the 80s, a story about a phantom hitchhiker might have just been told in a pub to a handful of people. But today, that same story can absolutely explode into a global phenomenon. It goes from a quiet conversation to a viral TikTok challenge, literally overnight. And suddenly, you have people flying in from all over the world to visit some random, once anonymous road, all because of a ghost story they saw on their phone. And that shift, it changes everything. Stories that were once deeply local are now instantly global. And think about this. Memories fade, old newspapers yellow and fall apart. But a digital thread on a forum, a viral video, that stuff creates a permanent, searchable archive. The ghost now has a digital footprint. In a way, it's become immortal.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, you realize a ghost story is almost never just a ghost story. It's more like a social X-ray of a city. It lets you see all the hidden fractures in a community, all the old injuries that never quite healed from, say, industrial decline or social injustice. It reveals all the tension simmering just below the shiny, polished surface of modern life.
So the next time you hear a weird local story, about a haunting in your own city, don't just brush it off. Pause for a second, because these ghosts, they aren't actually trying to scare you. They're trying to tell you something about who we are, where we've been, and maybe even where we're all headed. The only real question is, are you listening?